Good evening, everybody. Good evening and warm welcome to the Rushcliffe Borough Council's good evening. Good evening and a warm welcome to the Rushcliffe Borough Council's Community Scrutiny Group meeting. I would like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, other people may film, record, post on social media, or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch your microphones off when you're not speaking. Thank you. We've got in the room tonight from Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing, Andrew Reston, Interim Director of Home Ownership, Nicola Raphael, Head of Home Ownership Operations, and Kelly Fox, Interim Head of Housing. We've also got Councillor Roger Upton, Portfolio Holder for Planning and Housing. And we've got Darrell Birch, who's Service Manager for Neighbourhoods. Got Donna Dwyer, who's Strategic Housing Manager. And we've got Jeff Carpenter, who's the Service Manager for Public Protection. I would now like to move to the first item on the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Councillor Perrett. We have apologies from Councillor Matthews and we have Councillor Williams substituting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2. Do we have any declarations of interest? None? Okay. Item number 3. Minutes of the meeting held on 3rd April 2025. Can I please have a show of hands if you agree with the minutes held on the 3rd of April? Yeah. So whoever is present has a show of hands. So the minutes are okay. Item.
So could I just ask of the action points then?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just to confirm on the minutes, because there was we've got some new members of the group. Obviously, there were some councillors that were present last time, so the show of hands is fine for the minutes. In relation to the actions, there was 2 actions at the end of the minutes. To take members back, we had the Canal and Riverside Trust that presented. Nottinghamshire County Council confirmed that they did not have the resource to carry out consultation with the schools. But they confirmed that they were still looking to recruit to the senior ecologist post. That was around an action about how we communicate with the schools. And during the carbon management presentation, Ed Lebliowen was asked if we could contact Nottinghamshire Energy Partnership about them potentially coming to future events, and provide a stall at Rushcliffe events. I know that they have been asked, but obviously that's not in our gift to give, so ultimately it's up to themselves.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Blunt, and thank you, Darrell. I'll move on to the item for today's scrutiny, which is Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing. And may I please ask Donna to give a brief introduction? And may I also remind councillors that when you are asking questions after the presentation, do not use personal names or residence names and addresses, as this has been live streamed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This evening's report offers a review of MTVH's performance over the past year and seeks to gather members' feedback to further strengthen the partnership. The partnership was last scrutinised in October 2018, and since then, collaborative efforts have focused on delivering affordable housing, some community initiatives and joint schemes such as the carbon reduction projects. And some of those notable achievements include the redevelopment of garage sites to create affordable units, participation in the choice-based letting scheme, that's a key prevention tool, and joint environmental initiatives like social decarbonisation fund. However, recently we have faced challenges, particularly regarding delays in repairs and property standards, which have impacted tenant satisfaction. And these issues have been addressed through escalated engagement with MTBH's senior management, and that has resulted in improved services and working relationships. Our current scrutiny focus will explore MTBH's repairs and maintenance performance, overall operational effectiveness, customer satisfaction, community safety, asset management and compliance. You'll see in the report that it acknowledges potential risks such as mergers or regulatory changes which could affect accountability and service standards, and to mitigate these, ongoing communication and partnership working with MTBH representatives remains a priority. Finally, the report recommends that the Community Scrutiny Group reviews MTBH's performance, provides constructive feedback and suggests actionable improvements, particularly in repairs and maintenance, to ensure service standards are upheld and partnership effectiveness is strengthened. MTBH representatives will now provide members with a presentation, and we look forward to your questions on some of these key areas. I can hand over to Andrew. Thank you.
Happy to answer if we can, or take away what we can. Giving myself twice. So I will do introductions in a moment. But I'll introduce myself. So I'm Andrew Reston. I am the director of MTBH support, and I worked for MTBH for coming up for 11 years now, in a number of different guises. Most recently, I was the regional director, and I will talk a little bit about the reshape that the organisations undertook. And as Councillor said, I am currently looking after our home ownership division. So I'm looking after that for a period of months until we recruit a new director into that role. But I still remain the key relationship holder with Rushcliffe. So I'll talk about MTBH a little bit for those of you who don't know. We'll talk in depth around the numbers that we've got in Rushcliffe. Some slides on customer satisfaction, the data that we've been gathering. Our community impact work, the development, investment, repairs piece as well, which I know that you're very interested in, and then just a little bit around like the next 18 months, what we're going to be focusing on as an organisation, but particularly within Rushcliffe. So I'll hand over to Nick.
Good evening. My name's Nicola Raphael. So I'm head of home ownership operations, as Andrew said. I've been with MTBH for 23 years. And I previously covered Rushcliffe for a number of years, managing the mixed tenure stock. In the last year, we have decided to do a more focused approach to how we manage our housing stock. So that it means that my role now is purely managing leasehold. So I do that nationally. So there's 14,500 units that I manage across MTBH. And then we work alongside, obviously, our general needs colleagues. Obviously, in this instance, my in Rushcliffe area is Kelly. We did the divide in June last year, so we're relatively new. But I'm obviously responsible for our leaseholders and shared owners within the whole of the Midlands, but obviously specific here for tonight for Rushcliffe. So I'll hand over to Kelly.
Right, so my name's Kelly Fox. I'm the head of housing for the Midlands area, and I cover all the general needs. I've been with the company probably about 15 years now, and yeah, kind of worked my way up from a housing officer. Within my team, I think some of you have had contact with Kay Foster, who's the Housing Operations Manager. We also have 5 local housing managers that deal with like the day-to-day housing side of things, and a tenancy enforcement lead.
I'll be Lucy. So Lucy Wright, she looks after our supported housing accommodation. So as you've seen the numbers, we have a large proportion of later living in shelters. So Lucy looks after those. And Helen and Keith are her area manager stroke senior people who then manage the people that are based into the schemes. So pretty much on that top line is like sort of Kelly, Lucy and Nicola have roles or like play a part outside of Rushcliffe, but those below are pretty much all dedicated to Rushcliffe. So from a housing management perspective, these are the people that that run our operation in this area. So MTBH, for those of you that don't know, we are national. Call it a national organisation. Like we have 3 main centres: North London, South London, and in the Midlands. And in total, we manage just under 57,000 properties. You can see the split: 27% Midlands, 39% North London, 34% South London, and the counties. And staying on the right, 52% of our properties are social rented or affordable rent product. 33% are a leasehold shared ownership that Nicola looks after, and then supported housing, key worker housing that we do in London. So that is us nationally, and it's the makeup of the organisation. So the big bubble at the top, Rushcliffe is our largest parliamentary constituency. So we've just under 4,000 property units of accommodation.
Just a short interruption. There are at least 3 councillors here that don't represent areas that are in the Rushcliffe parliamentary constituency. So do you mean the borough council area?
So I mean the parliamentary constituency.
Do you mean the parliamentary constituency?
Yes.
Okay, right. Because I'm a councillor, and those 2 people over there are councillors for areas that aren't in the Rushcliffe parliamentary.
So yeah, that's a parliament. The numbers you're seeing are Rushcliffe numbers. Yeah.
As a parliamentary constituency, rather than the borough council area.
The numbers you're seeing are the council area, if that makes sense. Certainly, so it's
a Rushcliffe borough.
Yes,
It's the borough.
Yes.
It's the borough.
Thank
Right.
you.
That's all. That's all. It's just they are different. That's all.
Okay.
They have different geographic geographies. So
Right.
it's important to clarify.
So at the bottom, we've just had our regulatory inspection by the regulator of social housing, and we were V2, financial viability. That wasn't a surprise to us. Most developing organisations will be V2 because there's a risk to the market, or sort of risk to the balance sheet, because we're in a sales market. The C2 rating is a new rating that's come out. It's a consumer rating. We were disappointed but unsurprised by the C2 rating that we received, and there's work.
Sorry, we've got a question.
Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt again, but in terms of B2, C2, so B1.
Yes, sorry, yeah. B1's highest, B2, V3, yeah.
No higher than B3.
Lower than.
So
One
B3 is that? No, B3 is
V1 is the highest. Yeah. Sorry. So from a consumer point of view, as I say, I did disappointed, but weren't necessarily surprised. And the governance, we were disappointed in the governance, and there is work afoot to improve that rating. And what the regulator had said is that the transparency between operations and our boards needed tightening, and it needed an improvement. So currently working on that at the moment. So that's the national picture that's been happening pretty much over the past 6 months or so. Just headline figures. So total revenue is 454 million. That's from sales, developments, rental income that the organisation receives. The second point there is the 3.4 million. So we'll have, and you'll see in the slides, that we have quite a big community impact team that do an awful lot of work with our, I'll say, more vulnerable residents, but we are seeing increasing that residents are just becoming more vulnerable, and these teams, like we have, and people that will give financial advice and support those people that are struggling to pay the rent or struggling to live. And we will provide money advice to those about where to go, and we'll do grants ourselves. Other element is the development side of things, and we built 544 homes in the previous year. That's an ambition that we're going to increase moving forward.
Sorry, we've got Councillor Solomon.
Thank you. How many of those new homes were built within Rushcliffe Borough Council area?
Get used to this. I'm not exactly sure of that number, but I'll come back to you and let you know the development over the past 5 years, the new homes that are in the area in the past 5 years. Yeah, sure. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, some of the areas that we've done previously has been the East Leek. So there's been there was a large section 106 in East Leek. We've had Ed Walton, Cotgrave Colliery. So they're the three major sites that we've had. They're obviously, I mean, I'm trying to think now, they've probably been developed for the last one would have been Ed Walton. And like I said, prior to that, I think it would have been about 5 years ago, but I'm going to be corrected. But that is going to.
Yes, more recently, the market has slightly stalled with Section 106 development, so that's been an issue for all registered providers. But we do have regular discussions with MTVH development partners about the use of our capital grant and how we can bring forward development, and that's where the garage sites have been successful. But in new builds on new Section 106 sites with MTVH, it's probably slowed down a little. But to put that in context, that's probably been the same of many registered providers. And I know I've been contacted by the development manager just yesterday asking if we can have another meeting to see what they could do in relation to more new build development.
Detail about the stock that we have.
Sorry, we got a question from Councillor Brokaw.
Useful information, thank you. I was just wondering what would be, I mean, you've got some good information, you've got the neighbourhood there. I suppose we deal in the geography, as I was hinting before, of borough, council and wards. It would be great to know what the stock is and the breakdown of it at a ward level. I'm sure that data could be acquired. I mean, it's a bit of data crunching exercise to do, but I would be interested to know, you know, where are the social homes in my ward, where people need support. I know a little bit, I have an idea, but in terms of that breakdown, that would be really, really useful to see if we could put in a request for that, members are in agreement.
Yeah. I'll put that down as a recommendation towards the end. So I've noted that that you want a stock breakdown.
Yeah, we can do it by postcode, so it should be relatively easy.
Go there on the
We got Councillor Barney, and after that, may I request that Andrew completes his presentation, and then we'll have questions in the end.
Good idea, Councillor Hatley. Yeah, just noting that there's no mention of the your houses in my ward, Saw Valley ward. So does that fall under East Leek? Saw Valley.
Well, not bad.
Sorry, councillors. That was my point. That this, I don't know what the definition of neighbourhood is, so I'd like to see a breakdown by ward. I think that was. Yeah, I'm assuming I'm included in Bingham, but I don't know. You know. Well, my ward is called Cranmer, but it includes 7 villages. You might need to liaise with Donna to get the detail of the wards and where they cover. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we'll certainly get that information across to you. Again, like the presentation will be shared, and like sort of with the further detail that you're looking for, we'll share also. Kelly, do you want to talk customer satisfaction? So if I can just so the our tenant satisfaction measures, so on an annual basis, like very recently, we've had to, or we as a sector, report back on customer satisfaction, and there was a real disparity prior to like this year, really, because all associations were reporting different figures or different ways of doing it. That's all changed now, so the whole sector is reporting in a similar style. So what you see here is our satisfaction measures that are taken on an annual basis. Pass you over to Kelly.
Are you sure? So really, yeah, the main reason we included this slide was so you can see, if you look at the very bottom one, it's like the overall satisfaction, which is quite interesting for like Rushcliffe alone. It is coming in at 74%, which is, compared to say MTBH as a whole, significantly higher.
And again, what that does is it just gives us that how we're doing like within Rushcliffe itself, and we can cut that data down further. Whether we can do it by like sort of a smaller snippets, I'm not too sure, but we will certainly do that. But yeah, I think what it's given is it gives us a good impression that within Rushcliffe, in the main, our tenants, customers, residents are relatively happy with us.
And I can add, actually, and looking at our organisation as a whole, Rushcliffe is definitely within the top 15 out of all the local authorities that we work with. So the satisfaction is incredibly high. And I think a lot of that is to do with the partnership working that we do have with, obviously, Rushcliffe, the joint approaches that we take, things like the ASB Scrutiny group, and they're, you know, working with obviously additional partners, other organisations in the police.
Okay, so ASB within Rushcliffe. So currently there is 21 cases, and one of which is pending closure. So it's just waiting for the final sign off with the tenancy enforcement lead and obviously the complainant, just to confirm that it's all okay. The top issues that we do get reports around are arguments and harassment and noise. How it works within the business is that any high level ASB, it would automatically go over to the tenancy enforcement lead, and any contact made directly through to us, they would get a response within the 24-hour mark, with full advice and to complete an action plan. The tenancy enforcement lead is kind of the link between them and legal. So if we're looking to go down the formal route, be it tenancy enforcement, looking into injunctions or anything like that. It says low level, but we don't just class it as low level. It's just the standard level, I would say, is probably the best terminology there. Those go through to the local housing managers. This is the stage where it's about early intervention. The complainant would get a phone call within 5 working days, again, going through all the action plans and risk assessment and everything. At this level, it's about offering support, advice, mediation. If it's a tool that's suitable, is obviously offered if the people involved agree to it. I think the main thing for us to say is that ASB as a whole is a real joint agency approach. I know that I've spoken to a few of you about like different cases, and it is vital, like the information we get from the police or social services, it really kind of helps us pull a case together to either support a resident or to go down the formal route if required. And oh, sorry, another thing on the left-hand side of the slide, it did show over the different quarters where there was a higher level of ASB and it has kind of dipped down. So Rushcliffe and complaints. The total complaints received were at 577. Those were stage ones were 452, and the ones that moved on to stage 2 complaints, it was 125, so that's 27.7%. Overall, that's quite good. That means that we were able to go back to the majority of the complainants. Sorry. Can you put your mic on, please? So we were able to go back to a lot of the complainants in stage 1 with answers that they felt kind of covered their concerns. There is a breakdown of all the different categories on the left. Obviously, I won't read through all of them.
So, one that you've all been waiting for. So repairs. So as it says on the screen, we have an average 750 repairs raised per month for the Rushcliffe area. 100% completion rate is achieved on emergencies. 96% around our routine repairs are completed. 119 current active damp and mould cases, which is averaging at 14 per month, and 18 legal repairs. So we've obviously already heard that that's an area of concern. So just to kind of add the approach that we're looking at, so we currently have 2 repairs officers that cover the borough, and 1 surveyor. So in light of AWAB's law and the focus that we need to have around damp and mould, potentially some of that has come through obviously with yourselves in environmental health, and we are going to be employing a surveyor to specialise within this area. On top of that, the local teams, which will be the repairs as well as the local housing management teams, will have training. So when they're out obviously in customers' homes, they're better trained to understand and identify potential issues that we can then obviously pick up on and make sure it goes down the right path. So the way it works in the organisation is we have a specific flow. So we have what we call actions on CRM, a customer management system. And we have run specifically for damp and mould. That then enables the team to have an overview of how many cases they've got. They're able to break that down obviously into where they sit, hence why we're obviously able to advise we've got 119 for Rushcliffe. But it also then tracks the flow, so we can see at each stage where that case is at and actions that are being taken. But like I said, to support that effort, we are employing someone specific to focus on that. The middle bit is around how we manage contractors. So it's obviously it's quite small, so I'm not sure obviously how well you can see that, but it's around how we obviously gauge and map what they're delivering. So those figures will feed into obviously what I've shared with you today, the 96% on routine repairs. I think probably the best thing on this is, as I know there probably will be quite a few questions, is you've got the statistics, giving the overview of obviously our approach related to damp and mould, and then happy to kind of pick up questions that you may have around how we work in general, how we interlink between Rushcliffe, because I do know that there's been some discussions around how we improve partnership working to address some clear constituents' concerns. So next slide, development and investment. So again, we've touched on the development pipeline that we've had, and the most recent being the garage sites. So we've invested in our Rushcliffe homes in the last decade, £27 million based on kitchens, windows, doors, roof, cyclical decks. For my area specifically, that could be around external. So we have quite a few masonettes in the Woodington area, for example, West Bridgeford, Ed Walton. So for shared owners, leaseholders, it would be cyclical decks. And then obviously for where we've got buildings, we've not got many flats, as I'm sure you're aware, in Rushcliffe for communal areas, but we have a small amount. So I know we've got some in Woodington, Rufford. We also have some in Cotgrave. So there'll be in your internal cyclical decks that we'll be picking up there. We've also invested in the last 2 years in 750 homes across Rushcliffe, which is 7.85 million. Decarbonisation has also been a key factor that we've been focusing on, East Leak being one of the key areas that we've been working in. So that would be around our roofs, our windows, our doors, main focus obviously around reducing their energy efficiency for customers, so they can start to obviously see that, you know, we're insulating their homes, and then they're benefiting that obviously from their energy bills. We also have, which wouldn't directly link to decarbonisation, but links into the overall support for customers, when we engage with a company called Pocket Power. And what they do is they will then work with customers to identify savings. So that could be, for example, you know, you're on a particular tariff, not everybody obviously is aware of how they can change, or, you know, what would be classed as a tariff that works for them. And they can engage with this company or work with them to find the best supplier. Again, obviously, which all feeds into reducing outputs for customers and ensuring that they have more money, obviously, to spend in areas that they choose.
Final stretch now. I think the key figure here is the 413 Rushcliffe residents, so households have approached us for support in the 12-month period. We have a specialist team that are based out, some in London, some in our Nottingham office, and we any officer from MTBH refer into that team if they see an additional need, if they're out visiting a customer, talking, doing a repair. And as I said, there was 413 referrals into that team for many different like reasons. Some of the reasons are like 275 of those residents needed good services or vouchers, so they may have needed a cooker to cook, fridge, freezer. They may have needed vouchers for food because they were they couldn't feed their families. So, and like 78 of those residents were supported in rent-related issues. They were having difficulty paying their rent, which was putting their tenancy at risk. And our specialist team will step in, advise and help. And as Nicola said, one of the things we use is Pocket Power to help people to budget better, basically. So, and like when I first saw this figure, I was quite surprised, because if you look at the amount of properties that we have, that's 10% of the properties in Rushcliffe have approached us with some additional need of some description, which I was surprised. It seemed a lot. Double check the figures is correct. Community initiatives, this previous slide talked about £55,000, and that's like the investment that we as an organisation will put into Rushcliffe, and they're just a number of the initiatives that that we've been doing over the past 12 or 18 months. And our future improvement programme, as I said, these are the key things that we're going to be working and looking at over the next 12, 18 months as well. And I think like, on the repairs service delivery, so there is a property restructure that Nicola did describe, and we are introducing a second qualified surveyor into the Rushcliffe team, and they will predominantly focus on the damp and mould and the issues that properties are having. I think it's fair to say that it's an ageing stock, and we are seeing increasing complicated problems coming out of that stock. So we need to have the right skills and expertise to be able to land the solution to that, and in as cost-effective way as we possibly can. The other thing that will be happening in Rushcliffe imminently is that we are starting to look at a 30-year investment programme in those in the stock and in the properties. So that will take a considerable amount of work, but it will give us a really good understanding of the level of investment that we're going to have to make in the next 30 years to make sure that that stock is appropriate and the investment goes into the right places. So the collaboration piece that we've spoken about, I think it's fair to say that as an organisation, we went off the boil when it came to working closely with Rushcliffe. We've always had a really good relationship, I think we lost that for a little bit, but I do think it's back on track. And the issues that were brought to our attention, and as I say, at a senior level, our chief executive and my executive directors had conversations, we've met, and I'm not saying it's all rosy in the garden. There still will be issues, but I think the will's there for certainly us in both parties to resolve any issues. So yeah, lots going on. Very invested into the area, and really want to make it a success. I'm going to leave that slide up, and then take some questions. But customer access is that what we're trying to do is that those customers that are able and want to give them an online experience that's a good one. So if they want to talk to us, they don't need to pick up the telephone, they don't need to drop us an email, they can do that online. And 1 in 3 of our residents at this moment in time are active online or have an online account that is live and working. So I'll leave our bit there and happy to take the pre-given questions and any other questions that people have got.
Thank you for that presentation. We have some questions which are already presented by a couple of councillors. So what I plan to do is read out those questions first, let Andrew and his team answer those questions, and then I'll open the room for more questions from all the other councillors. So we have two questions from Councillor Plant. The first question is, if a MTVH tenant needs their house adapted and made accessible to their needs, example, wheelchair access, accessible bathroom, etc., how is that funded?
So, I mean, I'll start at the basics. So you may already know this, but a customer obviously has to have an occupational health referral, an assessment, and they would advise obviously what is required. For works that you've described, it would be a local authority funded application. So we'd be expected to contact the local authority, submit their request, that would then be reviewed. And what we also try to do is look at other options for a customer. So we totally appreciate that people want to stay in their homes. You know, it's the need for people or want for people to move somewhere else is diminishing. But we will look at, you know, is that the right option? Can we rehouse them in something that's more suitable? You know, is there anything else in the area? But in direct answer to your question, the route is that they refer to the local authority.
Are we talking a DFG, the DFG grant? And that is the only funding that is used by you?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
And no. So a recent example is that we have a resident that needed considerable adaptation done to the property, and there was a conversation between ourselves and the officers at Rushcliffe, and we agreed to, I'm going to call it overfund, but I don't mean it in that way. So we agreed to contribute more than we would normally do to in that situation. So we do have a policy, like our budget nationally is £530,000. We 530,000. Yeah, no, that's not right, is it? Just over £500,000. So from a national perspective, that budget is used really quickly because we have a lot of local authorities talking to us about the needs of where residents. Where we can, we will try, but there is a budget, and there's only so much in that budget. But yeah, the latest case that we are dealing with at this moment in time, we over contributed to make sure that we got a good result from that.
I know we'll stop in a minute. So you do have a particular budget for adaptions, right? But more often, majority of time, you call upon the local authority for a DFG grant.
Yes.
Okay.
And the second question we have, again from Councillor Plant, is Rushcliffe Borough has an ageing demographic. What percentage of MTVH housing stock is M42 or M43 compliant?
a really interesting question. And when I went back and asked our lettings team, we honestly, we don't have the answer to that. And like, I was talking to the housing team about, well, how do we know, and what happens at when a property becomes vacant. Then we have a full understanding of if that property is adapted or not. So there isn't a database that said these are the compliant and like these are adapted houses. But one of the things that we are doing is that we started a process about 6 months ago of doing home visits to all of our rented properties. So the local housing managers are arranging visits to go and visit every single property we own. And part of the what that they do, or the investigations when they're there, is understanding if they are adapted in any way, shape or form. That comes back and then that informs the system. So at this moment in time, I couldn't press a button and say it's 6,000, which equates to 2%, but that information will come. It comes every time there's a vacancy, but it will come as the local housing managers go out and understand better the properties that we've got.
Just to say, I find that surprising in terms of people wanting property and you not knowing that, and they may have sort of obviously needs, specific needs, and you can't say, well, this one has, you know, is vacant and this would be appropriate. And
yeah, absolutely, and it is a gap in the information that we have. What I would say is that we may know that we have this property, but if someone else is living in it, then like nobody else is going to move into it. So like to an extent, it's a chicken and egg situation. But yeah, I absolutely take the point.
Just building on to Councillor Plant's question, do you have timescales by when you would be able to supply us with that percentage of M42 and M43 compliant properties? You said housing managers are going in. So what kind of timescales we're looking at?
Yeah, so we're probably talking 18 to 24 months. By the time we've got the full data collection, any new build properties, we will know that. So it'll be an improving situation pretty much on a weekly basis. But yeah, we will have that data fully within 24 months.
We've now got questions from Councillor Butler. His first question is, when members submit a query, usually on behalf of residents, what timescale is expected to get not just a holding response, but also a detailed, relevant answer, which will, depending on what the query is, lead to action or resolution?
So process at the moment is for MPs and councillors. There is a specific email address that is used. So I'll send that out to you. It's a service improvement email address. That email address only deals with councillor or MP complaints, and there is a specialist team that man that inbox. And what they will do is they'll triage that, and then it will go to the most appropriate person within the organisation. The agreement that we also have, and like sort of I'm happy to share this, is that our local housing managers are accessible and like can be copied in, as Kelly's email address is known by some of you in this room, and that can be used by anyone. But what I would always ask is that service improvement are the main recipient, and then copy the other people in, because then it can be tracked, it will be monitored, and we're able to analyse the data and conversations that are coming in from the council. And again, I'll send and share the email addresses of the three of us, and like on an escalation point, I'm more than happy to take any query. But as I said, that it needs to go there so that we capture it. Time.
Just to follow on, we regularly circulate that information, and it's on the members' part of the intranet, is it? The portal side. So it's definitely on there. and we'll circulate it periodically, those contact details.
And so, like, timescales, it should be acknowledged within 5 days, and it should be dealt with within 10 days. There will be, and councillors usually deal with more complex issues, so there will be times that we need to extend because there'll be multiple people within the organisation that we need to contact. But what should happen, and again through service improvement, is the updates should be given in that we're still actively working on this. There might be a snippet of an update, but just to let councillors know that we are it's still a live issue for us.
Yes, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you for that. What I am aware of that email address, but I had it in my mind, and perhaps I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected, that we were only supposed to use that if we got cases where we were really struggling to get anywhere. So are we saying then that any query we get, in the first instance even, is to go to that? Because I suspect some of us are probably going to the normal general customer contact us, or what I think is that address. So just clarification on that would be really helpful. Thanks.
Sure. No, absolutely. That's your email address. So any queries that you have as a councillor, that gets you into the organisation. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to go through the response times up. But we'll know, and we'll capture that, and then we'll deal with it as a councillor, knowing that you're an elected member.
I will add, I think we're doing parts. So I agree where you're coming from, and I know what you're saying. We've got the local teams. I'd like to think you've got relationships with the local teams and the local housing managers, and you probably have those two-way conversations, and you can probably resolve some of your lower level queries on that level, which I wouldn't discourage. But I think obviously, like what we're saying here, is if you've got, like you said, you're having these conversations, or the answers you're struggling to get a response, or the multifaceted, where it covers quite a few areas, then that is definitely the best route. Because as Andrew said, we can log it, the right people are then getting tasked with the actions. So I just want to caveat with that, because I don't want you to kind of think, you know, if you've got a small question, you know, if you've already got that relationship, that you have to go through that route.
Thank you. I think the second question, I think that's been answered, about would it be possible to have a dedicated contact for councillors? So that's the third one is, can members be regularly kept informed, updated, so that we know what progress is made on queries?
I'll get this one. Firstly, I just want to say that we do completely recognise that, like, the value of keeping you all updated, and it's certainly something that I do. When I get an email, I make it very clear that I will come back straight away to at least acknowledge it. And I've always said, if my out of office is on, that is the only time that people won't get a response. Sorry, it does kind of link in with what Andrew was saying about the service improvement. I wouldn't kind of say not to email me, because I feel that we've had a lot of kind of good cases and we've moved things forward. But I'm obviously more than happy for that to be copied in as well. It won't mean for 1 second that I will look at an email and think I'll leave it. I will still come back the same way as I do. The only thing I would say is that if you are getting a lot of queries, and I assume it does get overwhelming at times if you're getting a lot of contact, I would encourage residents to contact us through our website or over the phone or online, just to take some of the pressure off yourselves a bit if they're reporting incidents. It also does mean that it goes straight into our system. If we, for example, if we've got an ASB case, it means that we get that direct contact. We can log it on a case, and we can also reach out directly to them. And it kind of, it bridges a gap more than anything. So we can straight away have that conversation, you know, like filling in an action plan with them, find out if they're comfortable to be offering evidence, say, or, you know, they're basically the position they're in. Another thing is, obviously, I know that you said about data protection. It is something that we are conscious. So I always try to give as much information as I can, but have to be careful what I disclose.
Thank you for that. Can I just clarify
Yeah.
that because Kelly is our housing manager, and Kelly's great. She's good at responding. But I just wanted to be clear. I didn't want to overload you with things. That's the point I was making. So because I know that we can contact you or your colleagues, depending which ward we are. But it's just a sort of the position, the bit in the middle before it gets to the need to contact you. That was the point I was trying to make. So from the initial service improvement enquiry, it's just, are we clear as to what timescales and response we get from that before we have to go running off to Kelly or her colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, they should be like confirming that they've received it in that by, and if there isn't a resolution within 10 working days, they should be back in touch and talking to you and updating you on on that particular case. So these guys, like this is the reason for being, is to track, inform, and keep up to date with those cases.
Yeah. And the final question is, some queries are as a result of effects of metropolitan that tenants are having on private neighbours. How do you respond and deal with such cases? And do you allow for the fact that third parties, neighbours, etc., need to know what is happening, that the complaints or queries are being treated as fairly as perhaps ones by metropolitan tenants?
Okay, so I'll start by saying that obviously we do completely understand that when we're having issues with our customers, that can have a knock-on effect for people living in the surrounding area. And this is why we do take a very joint agency approach to try and investigate cases to see what approach is needed. Once again, I will go back to, I do encourage that if you're getting these reports from private owners, say, please do encourage them to contact us directly, because sometimes this is the kind of evidence that we need, and it does get us in the position where we can have the right conversations again with the action plans to say, are you willing to write a statement? Would you be willing to be present in court if need be as a witness? So it is probably easier for us to have those kind of hard conversations. One thing I would say is, though, to note that not all of the cases with customers where they, like, for example, there can be noise complaints and everything, it doesn't automatically fall within the ASB category. And that's where we work, say, with social services to see if there is kind of additional needs. And actually, if we can help them maintain their tenancy by putting in a good support package, because at the end of the day, you know, we're landlords, but we're not here to make people homeless. We're wanting to support people to live well and be part of a community and have good homes. So I'd say that's our end game.
One of the suggestions that it's a recurring theme. This, because issues will happen and then we'll start to take action on individuals or properties. And often that action includes many different organisations. Could be the police, social services, the GP, mental health teams that are increasingly the mental health teams that are out there. And any one case can have all of those people wrapped around it, and there'll be things happening at a pace. And the people's ask is, can you tell me what's happening? And the answer to that is no. We can tell you that we're taking the appropriate action according to our policies and procedures, etc. But we won't be able to go into the detail that flat 54, we're currently speaking to the police, we're speaking to the mental health support agencies, we're doing this, that, and the next thing. That information can't be shared by us, for reasons of confidentiality. And I can sit here and say we do take it very seriously and we act appropriately and quickly, but that won't convince the person who's downstairs receiving a whole load of noise nuisance or anything along those lines. And very often it is a long journey to find a solution. It might be rehousing, it could be eviction, but on very, very few occasions does that actually take place, because as Kelly says, what we try to do is we try to support our residents as best we possibly can to find them more appropriate accommodation, or to live in a way that's acceptable to the neighbours. But these things don't come quickly, and we're not at liberty to share widely the actions that we are taking as an organisation. So I'm not saying like feel really sorry for us. It is tough when we're dealing with those, but it's what we do as a landlord.
Yes, thank you. Well, we all. Oh,
I just what I will do, and I think it'll be it makes interesting reading. I'll share some case studies with you of different incidents that we've dealt with in different parts of the country. But it just gives you a flavour of the complexity in an anonymous way of like those type of cases. So I'll happily share that.
Thank you for that. Well, we all know, whether we're councillors or metropolitan, we all know that dealing with people is not easy, and we know that goes with the territory. But what the point I was trying to make, I'm not going to, because we've all got cases, we all have cases, I know that. But you must understand that you're doing your best to help your tenants, quite rightly so, and for their lives and homes. But we are also trying to look after the neighbours who come to us at all hours of the day and night, desperate for well, not always, but sometimes desperate for help. And we, as their representatives, you will understand, feel a real need to do something about it, and without sort of banging the desk and having shouting matches and all the rest of it. And I know that I know only too well it's a difficult situation, but I just want to be sure that you get it, that the position we find it, and indeed council officers find as well, because not every day, but on a regular basis now, we are getting, or I am getting, cases and issues. That's the point I was making.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely 100%. And whilst we will always try to support our resident, we are very conscious of the wider community and very conscious of the impact that behaviours have on the wider community. Our area of expertise is trying to fix that problem there, and trying to communicate widely. It, as I say, is difficult, but we do have a view to the whole community.
Jeff, please.
Yeah. I think also just to clarify that the council itself has a responsibility when it comes and deals with noise and antisocial behaviour. So where, for whatever reason, a case is taking too long to resolve, or you're not getting, or the neighbours aren't getting the response, or they're not feeling that there is a satisfactory response, the council has a statutory responsibility under the Antisocial Behaviour Act, under the Environment Protection Act, to deal with such cases, and we do.
Yes, sir. Okay, Councillor Butler. That's the end of questions, and I know Councillor Grockock's already indicated he's got more questions. So over to you, Councillor Grockock, and yeah, I'll make a note of all the names.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly might know where I'm going to go with this, because she's been very helpful in responding to a couple of emails that I've been sending. So thank you anyway, Kelly, for that. Nice to meet you in person as well. My question's got a couple of aspects to it, and it's touched on it a little bit, but it's about the sort of legacy assets that you hold that might be very, very small pieces of land or garages or things like that. So I'll just draw this example out from my ward, but obviously the question is a general question because we're scrutinising the whole thing. There's a street in my ward. It's a rural ward in a village. It has, it's mostly probably private now. You might have a couple of houses on there still. I think there are a few that are still, 2 or 3 that are still yours. There's a piece of land at the back that was never transferred to you, was kept by the local authority, and is now leased to the parish council, which uses it as a biodiversity area would. The street and the green space completely surround an area of 4 garages that you currently still own. They are available to rent for anybody in the local community, but the reality is that only one is rented, as I understand it, out of 4. They're in a state of relative disrepair and dereliction. And they're sort of fenced off at the moment with Harris fencing, so it's a bit of an eyesore really at the end of this street. What Kelly has got back to me, it's not you, but you're talking to your development team and come back to us on, is to say that there's no plans to dispose of the asset at this point, and MTVH wants to consider it for development. But the reality is, it's too small for development. You wouldn't. It's the wrong shape as well. You know, it's long and thin because it's 4 garages in a row. It's highly unlikely that you'd be able to develop housing on it because you're surrounded by open space at the back, which is owned by the borough council and leased to the parish council, and then it's just a road in front. So it isn't really going to be developed. The community around there, the parish council, local private residents who live on there are interested in acquiring the space, but you're not interested in disposing of it at the moment. But I would probably ascertain it's more of a backlog in what you're considering doing with things. It's a low priority, it's a tiny site, it's a tiny set of garages. You know, we can't look at that now. You know, we've got a big backlog of estates and things like that going on within that we need to dispose of our assets. So in those sort of situations, and most of them will be, you will thinking, how can we develop housing on these sites? Most of those other sites you will, but this is a very small site. So I suppose my question is do you have a policy for those kind of small sites that you have remnants of left over after right to buy and transfer of assets and things like that, which couldn't be developed as housing? Do you have a policy regarding those? And secondly, it was related to your community stuff, which I thought was fantastic, but it's just a sort of a segue, a slight side question to it. Is there a minimal amount of your tenants within a neighbourhood that a community would have to get grant funding or support to do something like improve an asset such as this, for example? So two-pronged question, really. Firstly, do you have a policy about tiny assets that are parts of your estate that you can't redevelop as housing? And secondly, is there a minimum threshold for it to count as a metropolitan community for you to get funding to do community projects like some of the fantastic stuff you showed in your presentation? Thanks.
The garage, there is a garage strategy that's ongoing at this moment in time, and what we've done is we put garage sites and garage into a bucket, basically. Can it be developed by ourselves? And we have that conversation. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of the Rushcliffe garage sites, we've sweated that asset. There's very little left that we can build onto. The second bucket is a disposal bucket, and we would look. So there we were looking at maybe small developers that would build a bungalow. So there is some value to the land. So we could.
I think the guy wants to use them as garages. Actually,
we could
for his own.
We could do it. One of the things, and
private tenants want to acquire them, basically.
Yeah,
private homeowner. Sorry.
We haven't considered actually gifting them.
No, they would buy. They would buy.
Which would be even better.
Yes.
So that you got to have the money back.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to take that one away and have a look. We probably, as you say, we've got one tenanted garage that we would need to deal with. I'll be perfectly honest, they're a liability to us. So if we can do something positive within the local community, then we would certainly look to do that. Would we grant funds something like that? Probably not. But what we could do is heavily, with Rushcliffe's permission, heavily discount the sale.
And just related to that second point, not always in relation to assets. Do you have a minimum threshold for number of tenants on a street or in a neighbourhood for someone to access a community fund for a project? You're one of your funds.
No, there's no minimum criteria. We would look at it on a
and so you
individual basis.
Happily do projects that support other residents of the community that aren't your tenants. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
So just to make it absolutely clear, so if there are garages in the borough which are derelict, Councillor Grocox just gave one example, then members can get in touch with yourself about what could we do with those garages and whether you're prepared to sell them. And secondly, you said a garage strategy is being developed, and would that be then circulated to members as well?
Yes. to the first one, we would have to have conversations with officers of the council around what our intention was, and make sure that there was agreement that that was the case. And sorry, what was the second part?
You said you're developing a garage strategy.
Oh.
And so what I'm saying is, when that strategy has been formulated, would that be available for members to see?
I'm happy to share it. It is formulated, so it's out there. It's a national strategy. So you'll read a lot about garages that are in London and places like that. But more than welcome to that.
I've got a few more hands. Sorry, Jonathan. Yeah.
It's just on the back of the garage sites, really. That has been one of the successes of the Rushcliffe and Metropolitan Partnership, the garage redevelopment site. And when we look at grant as value for money for what we get and put in, and the outcome, which is a social housing unit, we're very, very keen and always put that forward to Metropolitan about any garage sites coming forward where we could utilise our grant to make that an affordable housing unit, and that would, and I appreciate you're coming from the community initiative side, but if there were internal conversations about garage sites, first and foremost we'd be looking for additional affordable units where we could put the grant in. So it's a conversation we're always having on that front.
So I think that might be though what's delayed this assessment of this site in particular, because you do have that policy first and foremost, and that's fair enough. And I think nobody's from the development team has investigated to confirm that this site is in fact too small to develop. So that's almost like the stage that needs to happen next before we can get into the conversation around asset disposal.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Solomon.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting. Because I haven't had actually many complaints from my ward about metropolitan housing at all, which is a good thing. So that's great. I wanted to ask about the active damp and mould issue, because that's obviously an awful issue to have, and it can have severe health consequences as well. And you said that in Rushcliffe there are 119 cases of this ongoing. So does a home have to reach a threshold of damp and mould for it to be considered an active case for you, the state it needs to get into? Then how long is the average time frame it takes from it to be accepted as a case to resolution? How many weeks or months do they have to put up with this till it's solved? How many of those cases are enduring cases where you have a real problem with something fundamental that is causing it? And then the other one is other reasons, because I presume some reasons for mould and damp are tenants not airing properties properly. So just a bit more understanding about that issue, please.
Obviously, once we discover there is any damp and mould in properties, it is something that we work with the customer with straight away. So if we found a property to be deemed high risk, our immediate reaction would be obviously complete all the surveys, but to work with the customer and decant them. It's all about their safety. It's all about getting them into suitable accommodation, be it a hotel or be it service department or another property if we have it. And we have specialists to go straight in and start dealing with the issue. Part of your question around the causes of it, in some cases it can be a bit more complex if it's down to a hoarding case, for an example. So with that, we have to take a more sensitive approach. It's not just about taking the customer out of their safe environment. It's about working with them, trying to find something that's suitable, getting support in place and working with them to either dispose of their stuff or clean it and store it where it's possible. At the moment, we're all going through a lot of training. So that is for local housing managers, repairs, everything. So it kind of links in with the home visits that I said about earlier, where we're intending to go and visit all of the properties. So people that probably aren't on the radar very often. So it's about going in, looking around the home, obviously with their permission. And if we see any issues, trying to target them straight away when they're not a big issue.
Kelly touched on it, the whole organisation's being trained at the moment on damp and mould. So it's a mandatory training that every member of staff will be receiving. Cases in damp and mould are slightly different because they're never closed until the damp and mould has been eradicated. Often we'll close a case if there's an action plan in place, but we don't close those because we'll go back repeated times to check that the problem's been solved, whatever that looks like. So at any one time, like we may have 500-600 cases, and you think, oh, that's an awful lot, but like the cases that we've known about for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and we're tracking it through to conclusion. And it is one of the reasons why our property team are like reshaping, and we're bringing another surveyor, qualified surveyor, into the fold, is to work on that. It's a number of different reasons, but like what we've got is that we've got old stock that is thermally inefficient, and that brings about its own problems. And we've got people that are maybe struggling financially, so they're not able to heat. Like say damp and mould is like you open a window and you put your heater on, it just doesn't make sense, but it helps. And if people can't afford that or like need to have it, then like there is it is going to happen. So a lot of it's education as well. We will educate people, move your furniture away from the wall, etc., etc. So yeah, it's a real, it's such high profile, and like, unfortunately through our Awaab's law, that's where it's come from. But yeah, it's a real conundrum for us.
Got Jeff wants to say something as well.
Yeah, I think it's an important factor in terms of kind of the numbers of complaints of disrepair that you have been receiving and we receive as well. So as a local authority, we have a statutory responsibility to deal with houses in disrepair. And it's fair to say, I think, that over the last couple of years, normally in the past, we wouldn't get many complaints of disrepair in metropolitan or general registered providing properties. But it's fair to say that over the last couple of years, there were quite a number of complaints related to disrepair, and we would get them generally when members of the public have complained to the registered provider, but they don't feel they're making satisfactory progress, and then they complain to us. And what we found was that there was quite a considerable increase in the numbers of complaints of that nature. And of course, then we have a statutory responsibility under the Housing Act then to work with the registered provider, Metropolitan in this case, to try and seek that resolution as quickly as possible. And because of the issues that were mentioned earlier, that wasn't ideal at that point. We're talking about 12 months ago now, to be fair. But a lot of work's gone into that now, and I'm happy to report that the numbers of complaints, we're still getting complaints, I have to say, when people aren't satisfied, they're getting a resolution as quickly as they would like, but they are reducing. And I would also say that the relationship between local authority, our own officers and within environmental health, and Metropolitan, the Metropolitan team is much improved. So those complaints are reducing.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Barney.
Yeah, thanks ever so much for giving up your time this evening and coming along. I've had a little look at your website, and that's prompted a couple of questions, if that's all right, Chair.
Yeah.
So first of all, I found your website incredibly refreshing and easy to navigate. I think you could advise local authorities on how to have very simplistic websites, really good. But it's triggered a couple of questions. One quite serious one, really. So I'm just encouraged to see actually that there's a number, probably about a dozen or so, homes that you manage in the Midlands, in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, for residents over the age of 55, and there were quite a few on there that I didn't realise existed, so that's really good to know. A few of them, though, I am aware of, and have had contact with in my own way. There's a huge acute need in many areas of Rushcliffe for more of this kind of accommodation, coordinated accommodation, supported accommodation for older people, even up into much older age. And at the same time, there's a number of sites across Rushcliffe where all of us as ward members probably think, God, that would just be fantastic if we could somehow get a mechanism to have coordinated or more appropriate housing for older people. going forward. But the barriers and how we achieve that and how we could possibly bring that to fruition seem immense. I'm just wondering if you can give us any guidance on what we could start to do to build cases, or indeed how you've brought the housing stock in for older people into your portfolio that already exists.
So it's my special subject, actually. I'm really passionate about older people's housing. And like there was a real splurge probably 30 years ago, and like we were building like mad. And what we're now doing is that we're coming to the end of the buildings are quite old fashioned, and like the new older person isn't necessarily wanting that type of accommodation. So when we talk about, oh, we can do with building much more, out of all of the portfolio in MTVH, the biggest vacancies in later living, it's in like sort of we're older. So we say, oh yeah, we need more, but we can't fill what we've got. So I think there's a process that we need to go into, which is refurbishment of the existing stuff. And we're really fortunate the stock transfer that took place. Our buildings in the main are really good, well-built, solid buildings. So there is a period, sorry, there's a plan for refurbishment to make them more attractive to people. The new builds, the private sector have really cornered the market. So it's a build for sale, and that's not something we haven't done that product within MTVH. And if we're doing a social rent, it's very difficult to make the money stack up to be able to buy the land, to be able to build them, and be able to rent them at an affordable level. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult.
Sure, yeah.
So another area of the website that I picked up on was the approval needed for residents that would like pets. It makes complete sense. I can understand why. It says in most cases you approve the approvals for dogs and cats, but I was so slightly surprised to see that residents have to make a request for a hamster, and wonder whether that's to protect hamsters or residents. I couldn't quite understand why it seemed a bit of a civil infringement for people to have to request at that level. And I'm wondering about goldfish. Would I need to request for a goldfish?
A large percentage of our ASB cases are actually caused by goldfish and hamsters, so we've had to take a review and obviously get them to ask permission. Yeah, I think it is more about that we ask them to the permission so we can make sure that they're being kept in a property or by people where we know like they're going to be safe. And
I think I like that answer. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely not the ASB answer.
Thank you. Before we go to the next question, Mr. Reston, could you please switch off the presentation because people are watching this live right now. They can't see everybody, and we got complaints and we're just seeing that on the board on YouTube. They're complaining real time, yeah.
Really?
Okay, so I think that's great. We zoomed in now. So I've got the next question for, I think, Councillor Williams. You're on next.
Must apologise first for my questions. I was having to substitute, so I haven't been able to send them through in advance. But one of my first questions is around the repairs and the process that happens around the repairs of properties, which quite surprised with the percentages that came out for Rushcliffe. So I was just kind of, first thing is just wondering how that survey's done with residents, if it's just a general yearly survey with everybody, or if it's kind of at the time that a repair has been done, and how then they kind of, as that repair is, like you would often get with things. But with repairs, myself and my fellow ward member, Councillor Regan, have had a few different cases that have come forward where residents have had an issue, for example, like guttering, not taking the water and disposing of it. And they've had multiple phone calls to try and get somebody to come out and to repair it. And then they've also had multiple people turn up to try and repair it, and have had to go away and get materials and then have never come back, or have turned up with the wrong kind of issue, like equipment and or fixtures and or whatever. Just an example. But one of the things that they found is that when somebody comes to do that repair, they found that it's then being logged as complete. Which then when they're having to ring up Metropolitan to then go and say, I've still got the guttering problem, they then feel like they go at the bottom of the queue. And the original case wasn't then necessarily reopened, and a fresh one was somebody comes out to inspect, goes, yes, this is what needs to be done. Then there it goes, the engineers come out, and then we're back to, and it just goes round in that kind of loop. So one of my first questions is, how does the work get signed off by Metropolitan? Does somebody go out and see it, like a housing officer, or is it kind of on the company that is doing the repair on behalf of Metropolitan or whoever is then saying, yes, we've done it? And is it kind of just be a Metropolitan then being charged if somebody goes out and visits but doesn't necessarily do the repair, and then has to try and then nothing happens, and then it isn't resolved? And is it kind of, do customers then get asked, are you satisfied with your repair? That's my first question.
Bear with me. So I think the first bit was around the satisfaction. So the figures that we shared were the is a perception. However, there is a satisfaction survey done on completion of a repair, and that's not the data that you've seen. And again, I'm quite happy to share that data. So every time something is done, we'll touch on like how was the experience, etc., etc. On the issue, because very often our routine repairs they're done by networks, and they're our in-house contractor. But we do check a certain amount of repairs on completion, and the repairs officer and the surveyors that are out there looking after the properties, they will go and check the quality of repair. But that same repairs officer or surveyor will be the ones that will go and review dissatisfaction. So if a customer says, I'm unhappy with this, I want to escalate it, that repairs officer will go look at the work and order the work in detail. Because when someone rings our centre in Beeston to report repair, like we're going on like what that conversation. So let me put it's a plumbing job, so we'll send a plumber, and the plumber gets there and says, well, it's not. It needs, or there's multi trades need to attend, and very often that's where delays happen, and that's where jobs will cancel down that shouldn't cancel down, and then need to be picked up again. But from a price point of view, that wouldn't we're not charged twice for that happening. The repair is the repair, but unfortunately it does happen, and then the sooner that we know about it and there's an escalation back into our property desk, that we can deal with it.
Yeah, just from experience with what we've had as councillors, we've had, as I say, people who have had to go around that cycle of reporting it, goes back in, but the original never really gets kind of reopened by Metropolitan, or they feel that a new case then opens, and they have a threat, like sometimes the same person comes out to look at the issue or what's causing it, and then it's some different ways tackling. So it's just kind of, they find it very frustrating that something, for instance, like guttering or what, can just take so long, can take months to get, because they're going round and for those kind of things that you've said, whereas somebody just went and did the job or looked at the job and went, this is what needs doing.
Yeah, 100%. It must be so frustrating that's the case. But like our ultimate is that we diagnose it in the call centre, and we do a first time fix on it. Life's not like that all of the time, but that's what we try to do, because it's a much more efficient way of doing it for us. It means our operatives are available to do the next job rather than go back to an existing job. But yeah, understand how frustrating it is.
And I just wanted to talk as well around we're helping people with the finances. I think it was like your company kind of organisation statistics where it was £3.4 million for people being better off out of 56,000 properties, which kind of calculated was like 60 quid per property. Is there anything more that kind of being done to help people and that? Because 60 quid, when you see 3.4 million, sounds a lot, but when you as up on £60 per property, it's probably like a week shop now.
Yeah, I think certainly that figure is that it's not spread across everyone. We have a good number of tenants who are well-paid jobs, etc., etc. So I don't know, but I will find out the average that is given to an individual. But as you say, it will be more than £60. Like £60 probably an average voucher for a food shop for somebody who's saying that they can't afford to eat. But we can add, what we can do is I'll come back with a more fuller understanding of our community impact within Rushcliffe, that'll include that data.
Sorry, so is that kind of like you said about your vouchers, goods, and that, is that what that amount is? So I might have misunderstood. I thought it was where kind of an education kind of thing of where they could save, and that's what kind of the total off people's monthly income and outgoings kind of equated to. So I might.
Yeah, no, we do have money advisors. So as I talked, kind of like Pocket Power, we have money advisors who can support with budgeting. Part of that also is kind of like educational pieces. So if people have a desire, say they want to do a new job or they want to have a new career, then we can obviously support and help them in the direction that they wish to go in. And obviously different strands all will then feed into, like you said, the overall financial viability that they're experiencing. So it's across the board. With the vouchers, like I said, that's separate. So we have what's called a tenant welfare fund that can be applied for by anybody, but it's generally our local housing managers because they have that direct relationship with customers, or our resident support managers who work from our support side of the business. So going back to your point around kind of the £60 average, every customer is assessed. They're assessed on their particular need, their particular circumstance, their particular income. So, you know, if you've got obviously a couple with one child, you're not going to give them the same value that you're going to give to obviously a family of 6. So they're assessed on their particular requirements and what they need. So food vouchers definitely could be one of those things that we can do. We've purchased beds, bedding, school uniform. So there's not a, I mean, as Andrew said, we can give you an average, but I think the real value is about understanding that it's a tailored approach. So that average can give you an overall figure for Rushcliffe, but it won't kind of tell you actually that this particular family, this is what we've managed to achieve, because like I said, they are assessed. So if we, for example, or one of the staff felt that actually we maybe need to spend £300 on this particular customer for whatever reason, then we could review that and assess that and make that decision.
I think it's probably important to add as well, with some customers, we do go in and do like garden clearances. If we find cases where there's hoarding and everything, then they'd be assigned a lot more money because we'd obviously get the support in place and do the clearing like through our contractors. So it really does vary from customer to customer.
Yeah, I think I must have interpreted that to begin with on that slide. So thank you very much for explaining it, and that there is a lot more in educational kind of things and help that, yeah, you might not be able to put a monetary kind of value on and difficult out of that. So yeah, thank you very much. Just with the online portal that you have for the residents and that, is there any way, like when councillors raise in a case, that we're able to see kind of what the status is of it online without having to email in or kind of, or where it's at, or kind of what's happening if it's a repair or antisocial or something? It's just trying for us to get information, but just so we can know.
I think the simple answer to that is no. There's no ability to track those cases. Like the centre can do that, and they will manage a case through. But an external view, I'm I doubt it is the answer.
I think the way top is obviously from a customer view. So they would set up on MTVH online, it's their access, it's their account. So what we'd kind of encourage that you would be present if they wanted to show you, obviously, then you would have access, like you said, to repairs. It is mainly, and obviously the rent account. And we're not at the stage where you can track and monitor antisocial behaviour on MTVH online, but certainly repairs you can. So it's a very interesting point. It's one I think to take back. But like I said, that's kind of how we work at the moment because it's a customer account.
Yeah, not necessarily like an online kind of portal login, but just something online that like with the email that you get it and you can like go and look at a status kind of external viewing kind of thing, because I appreciate GDPR and all that kind of thing, but it's just to go like a repair that has been out to visit the property and spoken to the resident, and this is kind of booked, for instance, and then we can know and we can go and say to the customer, yeah, well, this is what I've had, and just kind of getting that information quick because everybody's so busy, and as you say, with how many and having to escalate it and that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I understand, but the reason I explain that is because it's linked to the property. So that repair is linked to that property, which then can go to that customer account. So the only way you'd potentially be able to look at something like that is if it was communal, because then it would be open, obviously, for many people to see. So, just to kind of give a bit of context.
And my last kind of question, and it is the last one, is actually for officers, where we were looking at the compliance numbers from Metropolitan. Are we able to get that from all providers at all, please? The adaptive state, I can't remember what it was, M or something. Yes, that's it. Yes, I forgot. I didn't write it down quick enough. If we're able to find that out from all supply like providers, because for instance, I have 3 different suppliers providers in my ward, so I'm sure that trying to get an idea of the borough as a whole.
We have a number of registered providers that work in the borough. There's between 17 and 25 registered providers, and we don't have access to their stock profile. Some of them only have small handfuls of stock in the borough. So we could get an officer to email and ask how many of their stock in the borough is adaptable, accessible or wheelchair user, and we could come back with that. But what I would say is, so there's no real life profiling of social rented stock in the borough. There's not like a GIS system, and we're always getting new stock coming in, and then there might be some right to buys as well, so it's very difficult to track. So I think what I'm trying to say is we'll do our best to get as much information as we can. How accurate that will be, and then it'll be only relative to Rushcliffe and not their whole stock profile. So we'll certainly make the request.
That down as an action. I've got Councillor Billen, then I've got Councillor Upton, Councillor Plant, Councillor Butler. So I'm going to first come to Councillor Billen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. It's been really good. I've got 3 hopefully very short questions. Hopefully they can be short answers. One's kind of a statement, one of the question. Going back to garage sites, I think we've got at least one in my ward. I represent Leek Ward. You're probably very familiar with that, and it may have given you quite a few of your complaints about damp and things, etc. So on garage sites, do you know how many you've actually developed in Rushcliffe and how many there are in total in Rushcliffe?
Yes.
And could you tell us the numbers?
I'll get those numbers to you.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah. On the issue of the damp and mould and things like that, obviously you've done a lot of work in Leek, refurbishing what we know as what has been known as Tin Town is the Rushcliffe estate. We've had quite a few, I don't know exactly how many, quite a few emails and personal representations about damp that got in during those works, because gable ends, etc., were just left. And I do understand racing against weather patterns, etc., things get left open. Have the lessons been learnt going forward that that doesn't happen anywhere else?
I think yes. I think the whole decarb work that we started, it was quite new in our journey of doing the full, and I think not everything went according to plan. Yes, those lessons have been learned. I think as we've moved on in the programme, things have got better, and certainly that learning has been taken to elsewhere in the country where we're doing a similar thing. So yes.
And on that same estate, do you know how close you are to completion?
I think the completion, it'll never complete. So like within a particular area. No, I'm not aware of the figures for that. When I say the never complete bit, is that we will continue to apply for grant to improve the quality of all of our stock. So as grant becomes available, we'll be first in the queue to try and draw that grant down to improve. But actually within your world, I can find out when the programme's due to end.
Thank you, because there are other projects in that particular area that need to happen soon. And on the general refurb of housing stock for later living and assisted living, we have a property called Tooting Court in Eastleigh. I'm a little bit unsure about what actually is down to the tenants or the new resident and yourselves regarding refurb, because we actually looked to try and rent one quite a while ago from mother-in-law, and the new resident had to provide curtains and decorate. Is that, yeah, sort of carpets, curtains, decoration, is that standard?
Within the properties, yes.
So within each individual flat, that's the resident's responsibility. Your work is on the communal areas only.
Yes. So carpets, furnishings, etc., kitchens, bathrooms, those permanent fixtures, our responsibility. So we would do that. And if residents were struggling, whether it be carpets or then we would use our charitable funds to help people that couldn't fully furnish their properties.
Thank you. Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm conscious of time and my comments are really statements rather than questions. I've been a councillor for the Radcliffe-on-Trent ward for nearly 10 years, and I think from your data we've probably got the most housing stock in Radcliffe-on-Trent, I think, from you. I have to say that I've built relationships with your local housing officer, and it's proved excellent. Currently it's Lee Smith. I've met him, he phones me, I phone him, we email each other, and 99% of my issues, and like Councillor Solomon, touch wood, they are very few, probably less than one a week on average, so whatever. I find that the best route, and very occasionally, count them on that hand, frankly, in 10 years I've come any higher, because it's been resolved timely and in good quality, in my opinion, be it a boiler or gutter or whatever. Maybe I have good fortune, maybe not, but that's my experience. So I sound the gong for local contact, face to face with your on the ground people. Very quickly, I'll just say about mould and damp. Yes, that is a topic nationally that's in the media, and rightly so. I first got involved with mould and damp 45 years ago when I started work at the City of Portsmouth Housing Department. That was challenging at Lee Park, which was the largest council estate in Europe at the time, or purported to be, and that had plenty of black mould and damp. And then I graduated to the heady heights of London Borough of Hounslow and Ealing, Acton Estates, multi-storey, low-rise, you name it, Southall. Again, black mould and damp. And we've still got black mould and damp. And I probably suspect we'll have it in 50 years' time when I've gone. And it's, as you said, it's an issue of, in my opinion, lifestyle, how people live, and the actual property itself. And in Radcliffe, you've got Homes for Heroes, 1918-20, trad built solid walls. You've got a whole load of prefabricated Cornish houses, airy houses, post Second World War, early 1950s, very inefficient energy wise. You've got a whole range. I feel for you because in the latter part of my career, I ran the whole of Nottinghamshire building maintenance. Day-to-day budget, millions of cash there and hundreds of thousands of requests per annum and a planned maintenance budget. Schools, fire, police, you name it. So the logistics of you managing those calls, I get it. And the repeat problem that Councillor Williams alludes to in Bingham, where people, not just one person would phone in, any number of people at the school would phone in about the same broken window or blocked drain. And how you manage all that logistically is an issue, quite a challenge for you. So that's really all I wanted to say. It's not a question, but it's particularly on the black mold and dampness. I don't think there's an easy fix for it. Everyone is almost a unique case and it needs specific remedies. I'm pleased to hear you're going to have a qualified surveyor to help your other staff focusing on that, because it is a big issue today and it does affect people's health. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I now realise why I'm so tired.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. I've got Councillor Malander.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very interesting presentation. And mine is not about issues in my ward because, touch wood, there's not been anything recently, so that's good. I'd be really interested to sort of see, as Councillor Upton was saying, there's a variety of housing stock that you've got out there. And that sort of leads to two follow-on questions. One is there's a lot of work that we're doing as an organisation around decarbonisation and reducing our carbon footprint. There's the target for net zero still for 2050. And housing is a really big part of that. And there are a lot of challenges from all the different kinds of housing. And, you know, try and put some insulation in certain parts of a solid wall housing, and next thing you know, you've got your mold creeping across and the joists rotting and things like that. So I'd be interested to know what your plans are for that, what progress you're making. And that sort of ties in also with the issues of, you know, making sure that those homes are well insulated and that they can sort of keep people warm in the winter and cool in summer. And that helps reduce people's bills as well. So I'd be interested to hear what your progress and plans are around that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Probably 2 years ago, like we, as an organisation, we created a specialist team that would deal with decarbonisation, that would deal with looking at what grants were available to us, and also deal with the level of investment that we as an organisation would put into our property on that very issue. They're an active team, and as time goes by, the level of improvements financially, but most importantly, that what customers are seeing is increasing. So we have a policy, and we have a future look at what we're going to do. I'm no expert, but we have experts in the business, and happy to share our approach to that with the council.
Yeah, thank you. It would be great if we could have that. Interesting to see how far you've got, what your plans are, and what progress is being made. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I'll be brief. It's picking up actually what we've already spoken about with the garage sites. We've mentioned that there are some garage sites that are plainly not suitable for building new properties on. I must say the ones where we have been very successful, and they have been good. But it's more of an observation, that maybe a question for the council, in fairness. I know of a couple of sites in my ward in Copgrave, which garage sites, which are now pretty much not used and near enough derelict. They're bang in the middle of an estate that a lot of old post-war estates have, and that is problems with on-street car parking. So we all know, don't we, that when the houses were built, many people didn't have one car, let alone several. So as a result, you get all this on-road parking causing problems. Have we ever thought if we've got any garage sites that you can't build on, have we thought about possibly, and I know it's probably pie in the sky, but let's put the idea there, because I know we've got to pay for it, is somehow converting, knocking the garages down and making that public land area for people to park their cars on. That's just a thought going through my mind. And I realise this is probably not for tonight, but it's just a thought to put out ahead. And then finally, just going back to one of your slides you had about the complaints or the numbers of complaints you get and the way you measure them. When you measure them, if you get, say, two or three people making the same complaint or complaints against the same household, is that counted as one complaint, or is it counted as two or three, even though it's different people complaining about the same problem?
It would count individually. So if there was 3 people around the same issue, it would be 3 complaints that we'd be dealing with, because the individual would receive the response to the complaint that they've raised.
I'll go Councillor Plant.
I've got a few, but I'll try and make them very short. And thank you certainly for your patience. I know you've probably had a long working day, and now you've had a quite long and late evening. But I think what you mentioned at the end of your slide, PowerPoint, was there was going to be, I think one of the reasons why there are so many questions, obviously, because it is a very complex issue, is the fact that obviously we haven't had any scrutiny of Metropolitan since 2018. I think I'm probably the only person in this room that was actually present at that. Yeah, oh, 2 of us, yes, right, okay. And I think that says a lot, because obviously that is why there is so many questions and so many concerns. And having a biannual report, which you have suggested, is a really good idea. And will that, my question probably for officers is, will that come to, could that be a regular biannual, at least to the community scrutiny group or whatever, but I'll just throw that one out. And you have answered very well the improvements really for contact communication with councillors, but very much the thrust of this support is actually residents' concerns over repairs, or not getting the repairs or whatever. And I just would like you, if you could just very briefly, I mean, I've had, to be fair, I have asked colleagues in terms of other councillors who've worked with Metropolitan what concerns they've had over the past year or so, or even obviously longer. And in terms of residents, there's they don't really know who to contact to begin with. They can ring the customer contact number and they're on hold for well over hours. And when someone does get back to them, nothing happens after that contact, or somebody will then come out and look at whatever it is the repair is, and then nothing happens. So residents, and obviously these are not all residents, we are very aware of that, but it is, you are, I mean, obviously many of our residents are vulnerable, and then the system, I'm just assuming that you have made improvements to that system, because that's the crux of the matter. The residents in your properties need to be able to contact you and to be assured that they will get a timely response and know what that time response will be, or the timelines or whatever. So that would be, if you could just briefly say that was, I haven't finished after that, but I will be quick.
First point around the newsletter twice a year, is that's something that we will create and we will share. And what we'll do is that we'll send that out and then take comments about what's useful, what's not useful, what you would like to see further. And we will use the same template format, update the information and send that out twice a year. We'd still love to come to full scrutiny, so we wouldn't want that ruled out either. I completely agree with what you're saying, is that customer access to us as an organisation is key. I think we've talked about the online approach. That's a much more efficient approach, but as a Luddite myself, I'd rather pick up the phone. And what we do is that we monitor call wait times and how many calls have failed because someone's waited 5, 10, however many minutes. So our centre in Beeston, like, it's something, if you go in, and I open this invite up to all of you, if you want to come to Beeston to see the operation, we can arrange that to show you. But it's like the screen's up there and it's saying how long someone's waiting for, and like we try to get it answered as quickly as possible, and the time and effort we put into our call handlers to make sure that the experience is a good one, but they're speaking to someone who knows what they're doing. We're not scripted. If someone rings with a repair, there's a process that someone will go through, but we're not a scripted organisation, so we should be listening, we should be acting, and you should be having experienced people. And if it's not good enough, then we would want to hear about it through a complaint, because if someone's annoyed by the time they get to speak to us, it's going to continue. So we try to give them as good an experience as possible. So yeah, I'm absolutely, we need to improve that at every opportunity.
Thank you. And obviously you need to get feedback on
Yes.
how that's working, because that's the most important aspect really for the residents. What was my other thing? Oh yeah, in terms of sheltered accommodation or did you later living, that I've not heard that one. Right, my ward is full of such schemes, without a doubt. And in conversation that I've had with some of the schemes in the ward, I won't mention which, like you said and pointed out, there are difficulties in you actually filling them now. But what I've had concerns that have come to me have that because they're not, you've got vacancies, that there are people, residents that are in there with extra care, some form of extra care, but obviously that extra care is not there 24/7 or whatever, and there have been concerns about the behaviours of these residents when that support's not there. I don't know what or how that can actually be. I mean, obviously, I can understand that people have to live somewhere and they have to be supported, but it often causes a great deal of grief for the other residents. And I don't know whether that's a thing that you've felt from most of your sheltered accommodation scheme, and how best that can be supported.
Yeah, it's an increasing problem. In what our first approach to that is that we do look very closely at someone's suitability for that particular scheme, because there may be a scheme round the corner or like somewhere else that would better suit their needs. We have put in place, in the vast majority, we've got housing with support managers, so there is an on-site metropolitan person, and they will very often work through any issues that people start to exhibit, either at the beginning of their tenancy, but there's many people that age in place, and we would want to try and maintain people for as long as they possibly, if they choose to live, for as long as we possibly can. So it's trying to create the support network round about them from external agencies. But it is certainly over like my lifetime in later living or sheltered housing, we started to see more and more younger, older people going in, and like years ago, you wouldn't have someone who necessarily had a drug problem, but younger, older people now are like presenting with drug problems. So like managing those situations, supporting the individual, but also supporting the rest of the community, because they are very tight communities, is like can be difficult, but like we do again like try as much as possible to create that harmony.
I appreciate that's obviously a difficult balance, but perhaps also working with the other residents or communicating more with them as well in terms of the warden or whatever, what's actually happening in the complex would help. And my last one really is, in terms of tenants associations, do you work with any, and in terms of getting feedback from them?
Yeah, we do. We've got tenant associations and leasehold which are obviously a bit different, and we do use them to, well, work with them, sorry, is a better way to put it, around consultation and everything. On a site recently, we needed to make quite big changes around bin storage. So in the first instance, I went to the Leasehold Association. They were able to advise how they would prefer the consultation to go. And it was a really kind of beneficial project for us all, because it did kind of build that bridge between us.
We have an internal team called a customer voice team. So their main focus is what it says on the tin, is obviously to rectify and show customer voice. So if customers were interested in setting up a TRA, then they can link into that team who will support them, explain what the structure is, and provide the kind of, you know, governance around obviously being a TRA. As Kelly said, majority of them tend to be in our leasehold, but I think as a starting point, the customer voice team is where it would be best to be directed, so they can have a conversation and any guidance if that was the route that they wanted to take. And then obviously aside from that, if we did have the TRAs, that is our first engagement point, because that's the whole, you know, their role. But we would also engage with wider community. So our first protocol with anything we're doing, we would have a conversation. What do you think? Let's tweak it before we go out to the rest of the customer group. So yeah, I don't know if you've got anybody in mind, or even, you know, we're always interested in customers coming to be part of the groups that we have. We have customer committees. So what we can do is share a bit about customer voice, and that way you're all aware of how customers can feed into MTVH, because we do also use scrutiny groups. So we run policies through customers so that actually we're listening to what our customers are saying, but then also taking their feedback from their personal experience. So I'll get the link shared in obviously the wider minutes.
I think we've had a good scrutiny for nearly 2 hours. Hope all questions are answered. Before I move on to the recommendations, Daryl's got something to say.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right at the very start of the presentation, there's obviously a number of actions that will come with the minutes. Right at the start of the presentation, there's quite a bit of discussion around the numbers and the report list. There's 3,800 properties. I think you mentioned close to 4,000. Some councillors were asking whether they can have that broken down into ward and specific locations. I would just need to understand why you would need to have specific locations. I think we're quite comfortable showing number of properties in wards, but not specific locations. If you do, yeah, thank you.
Actions.
The actions. Sorry, Councillor Solomon.
I was just going to say that when I became a councillor and aware of Metropolitan, that is something that I asked a member of Rushcliffe team for. I asked how many Metropolitan houses do I have in my ward and where are they? And I got that answer back. I can't remember the name of the officer who did it for me, but he was very good and he got back really quickly. So I'm sure that they can replicate that and just give a general idea of where they are. It was really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for people to sort of email me offline after the meeting or just chat about it, but I suppose it's really a question of how that would help you support you in your ward duties. But as I say, I think my gut feeling at the moment is we're probably happy to share numbers rather than precise locations, but we can have a chat about that.
It was just knowing where they were, so I can proactively go and knock on a few doors and check, is everything okay? Engage.
Thank you. Just sorry, Councillor, just in relation to the actions, there are a number of actions. We won't go through them all now, but they will be sent through with the minutes, and I'm sure Tracy's got a big list of them at the end.
Yeah, I totally understand if you can't give like specific kind of areas to councillors of how many and housing, but I think, I don't know if it has been asked previously, but it'd be really useful to know what associations are within our wards and that, because sometimes if I have a resident who comes to me with an issue or being in a property by one of the providers or a private owner with a issue with a neighbouring and they suspect that it is, I often have to ask officers, could you tell me which provider this is from? To just double check that kind of my knowledge or my understanding is of where providers are within my ward. So I think it would be really useful if we could just know, or kind of just an email to each, like councillors, should say these are your providers in your ward, because there is, like as Donna said, there's so many that are within the borough, and it can be a minefield to find out.
I think that's a reasonable request. Would that is that a possibility that we could provide all councillors the registered housing providers in their ward, not the locations, but just which providers operating in their wards?
Yes, I say that with 98% confidence. In terms, I'd just reiterate the point earlier on, we don't actually have a live stock profiling system, so that's when it becomes a little bit more difficult. But certainly registered providers who we're working with, and we'll do our level most best to get that information, but it might be going back in files, etc., for a while. But I think it's an action point to take away for the future about how best we can look at that. And just going back to Daryl's point, it's about sensitivities with some of that data. So when we're looking at new developments and affordable housing, they're always supposed to be 10-year blind, pepper potted, so that they can't, the stock, the social housing stock, cannot be recognised separately from the owner occupied stock. So we always are very cautious about having any profiling around that, and I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of assistance, but I think that's what would be at the forefront of why we probably don't do that profiling. Apart from it would be a huge task in itself, but I'll take away the requests and see what information we can get at this point and get that back to you. But it's never going to be as probably specific as you want, but I think starting with the registered providers in the wards is a good starting point. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. I've got Councillor Groper quickly, and then Councillor Billen.
Just clarifying, Daryl, that you did pick up that we wanted a breakdown of the tenure types as well. They had some nice pie charts on there showing which was sheltered, supported, which was social housing as well. So we could get that breakdown too.
One very quickly was just a sort of a suggestion about the data that you're gathering. If you can regularly do a sort of sweep of that, so that when we do phone up, it's to hand, to save you to then delve through things, because once you've done it once, it's current for how many years. I think it'd be, quite useful.
Another question we have here is, are we getting this PowerPoint sent to members? Yeah, because we couldn't read a lot of the things. Yeah, thank you. Right, okay, so we'll come to recommendations. So it is recommended that the Community Scrutiny Group considers the information provided in the report and the presentation by MTVH and provides feedback to support future working relationships. I think we all have done that diligently. So could we have a show of hands that we, yeah.
Could we get a slight amendment to that based on what Councillor Plant said about the biannual report, just to add that in, please, if that's okay, some sort of wording that just to add it to the recommendations as a second recommendation or as part of that recommendation.
Just to clarify then, so you're requesting that one of the recommendations from this group is it comes back to scrutiny on a biannual basis, or you want to just have a members report shared?
I like the biannual. Sorry, I like Councillor Plant's recommendation of biannual, yes.
I mean, certainly as a group you can recommend that, but obviously at the moment the process is that the scrutiny matrix is produced and that goes through COG, and then any work streams, we're coming on to workload in a minute, anything that goes through COG. So really I think it's probably something we would need to take away, and then potentially have to go back through COG and the chair of COG to discuss how that works.
Yeah. If I just may add, some time back Metropolitan, as it was then, and TVH used to provide a newsletter for us, and that was circulated to members, and that sort of fell by the wayside, but that was really useful because that was a snapshot of some of the information that's been provided today. So I'm wondering whether that might be a way forward, as opposed to a biannual scrutiny, and appreciate what you've said, and that'll go through the scrutiny. But we have the biannual newsletter that's sent out with that performance data in, just as a suggestion.
I think just a quick one. I think what everybody over here is in agreement that a biannual scrutiny would be much better. And yes, we will welcome the newsletter as well, but given not everybody's in agreement. Okay, I think I'm getting mixed messages there. Go on, Councillor.
Clarify. I mean, we haven't voted on it, obviously, so I don't want to like bounce people into it. I'll be happy with a frequency that office has recommended. You know, it doesn't have to be biannual, but if there's a frequency that you would recommend, then we can go with that. As long as it's not 7 years, you know, and we can get it to a more reasonable frequency, once a year, you know, something like that. An annual, you know, I would even say, yeah, once every 18 months or something, but, you know, some frequency that we think is agreeable, you know. Annual.
Is everybody okay for an annual scrutiny? Yeah. What are your views?
I think my immediate view on it is we have a process in place where the work programme of this group's decided through COG, and the reason it's not been sort of discussed. I mean, obviously we did used to have groups that did used to come to the old performance management board on a regular basis, and we have standing items that come to this group. The reason it's probably not been discussed for a while, and possibly the reason that Councillor Upton submitted the scrutiny matrix, is because we felt maybe we'd experienced some issues, we've had some improvements, and you felt it was time to be scrutinised again. My gut feeling at the moment is that we will still need to go through the current process we have, which is to submit a scrutiny matrix, which you would need to do to be discussed through COG to decide if it comes into the work programme.
Okay, has anybody got any comments on that?
Oh, just to be clear, Darryl, you're saying that there would have to be another scrutiny matrix written every whatever in order to get it to
Can I just say scrutiny requests? We don't use the word matrix anymore. I'm trying to get away from that language. Just to say.
Oh, Councillor Grocock.
I mean, that would that's just basically saying, can we just leave it as it is? And I think we as a scrutiny group, surely we can make a request. I've done it in other scrutiny groups to have a level of regularity of some sort of topic that's discussed. I mean, this is possibly the most important topic that this group covers. So for us not to have some level of regularity within it doesn't seem an unreasonable request to me, to have some level of regularity. This is just built in, and we haven't got to go through the administrative process of putting in a request to COG all the time. That's all.
Councillor Solomon.
Yeah. So I can see both sides, yeah, as I usually do. Too little and too often. It's about finding the medium ground, because housing is a really personal issue and a really hot topic that we all deal with, and there have been issues which have caused a lot of problems, and I think the worry is that if we just leave it go again and go, okay, we're back on track, and leave it go again, the problems will start happening. So it's about staying on top of the problem to make sure we don't go down that route again. So I would go with, you can try it once a year, so we can question and open, and that's accountable. And then if we find that then is fine, you can review it again. But I think the worry is not having that accountability and having to deal with problems. It's better to head them off.
I agree with that, Councillor Solomon, Councillor Grocock, and I think the sentiment in this room is that we've come here after 7 years, and I know Metropolitan does a great presentation today, but the point is there are a number of issues that have been raised, and there are a number of actions that need to be followed up. So as councillors, we are answerable to our residents, and we would like to be on top of those matters. So I understand what you're saying, Daryl, but the overall sentiment in this room is that we want to make a recommendation. We want to come back on an annual basis. So how can you make sure that that is implemented on an annual basis going forward?
So I think the simplest solution, if there's an agreement that you want to make a recommendation, is a recommendation wording would be along the lines of that the community scrutiny group thank Metropolitan for their attendance, but would like them to come back to deliver a further update and report within 12 months, and that would be a request made via COG to have another scrutiny item in 12 months to monitor progress.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So are we now all happy with the recommendations? We have a show of hands, please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew, Nicola, and Kelly. I know it's been very long, but we really, really appreciate you coming and answering all our questions patiently. Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
We'll hold you to that.
I'm just delighted that you liked us that much. You want to see us every 6 months, but
So we've got one more item. So yeah, which is the works program. I'll be very quick. Yeah, you're free to leave. That's absolutely fine. So for this year, for 16th of October, we've got Rushcliffe flood risk update and no other item. For 22nd January, there is nothing on. And for 2nd of April, we've got the carbon management plan update, and that's it. So we don't have many items for scrutiny. So I would request councillors, I would request you to go back to your respective groups, your colleagues, talk to them about scrutiny, filling up scrutiny, not the matrix, but scrutiny requests, not the matrix scrutiny requests, and submit it to officers. And I'm hoping to see more items on the agenda and make my job more interesting here.
May I ask a very quick question about October with the flood risk update? Is that just from Rushcliffe, or are we having outside agencies coming in to feed in?
No, with County Council Strategic Rushcliffe, a risk group that will be coming and updating us on their work.
I'll draw this name. Yes.
Can we request that they talk to the Environment Agency, Severn Trent Water, the Trent Valley Internal Drainage Board, and anybody else that might have information that we need prior to that? Can we just make sure that they are prepped? Because I've been dealing with flood issues in my ward, and it is like 25 different agencies. Yeah. And so we want those lead flood authorities to have talked to Trent Valley Internal Drainage Board, to have talked to the Environment Agency, to talk to Severn Trent prior to come to this, and be well prepped with everything that we can ask.
Can I suggest with that, that with this particular item, when the report was published, councillors sent their questions. Similarly, if we do that before the next one, and we ensure, Daryl, that whoever is coming, they've talked to everybody appropriately.
Yeah, happy if we do that. We have pre-arranged questions. I will add, I do occasionally attend as part of my Rushcliffe role, the flood risk group at county, and all of the members or the organisations you mentioned do attend that group as well. But yeah, happy if you've got some questions in particular, then we can prepare them.
Can I just make a point that because of the nature of that issue and how long it takes those agencies to actually answer any question, that report comes out, or the request for questions comes out a lot earlier. As somebody who sits on Trent Valley Drainage Board, I know how long it takes to get an answer.
I think that's a reasonable request, given the topic. How early could we get the report on that matter?
Need to look at the workload and timetable for it, because if you're requesting the reports brought forward, then we would just need to look at workload from an officer point of view and when that's due.
Councillor Williams.
Preempting the plea from the chair for lots of requests coming into the next corporate overview group, there is the pending kind of nothing on the January programme, so it could be put to there if it gives more time to answer the questions and to get the answers. No, but that's where we've got all the requests now coming in to be discussed at the next corporate overview. So then you'll have something for October. But just in case.
I mean, just so members aware, we have already teed up colleagues at the county. We have already teed up colleagues at the county. They will be attending on that night.
Also, I'd quite like to do it before the winter as well. You know, I'd quite like to get ahead of the game, if that's all right. You know.
So we'll keep that program as it is. Darryl's made a note of the report coming out early. I'm sure I'll speak to Darryl before that to see how earlier it can come out, depending upon officer capacity. But can we all agree that we all agree with the work program as we've set out below?
Yep.
Items on the agenda, and I call this meeting to close.
Thank you.